Well, guys, it's official. We know all the teams that are going to be in this year's NHL playoffs. We found out today when the New York Islanders managed to beat the Montreal Canadiens to secure that last spot. So before we get on to our playoff videos, which believe me, trust me, we are going to be pumping out a lot of playoff content for you. It's going to be really hype. We're going to give you our thoughts. We're going to give you our previews. But we wanted to go one last time and talk about these 16 teams that did not make the NHL playoffs and where they go from here. And we're going to start with the Columbus Blue Jackets, right now at the bottom of the league. Columbus, really, when I look at this team, they got Johnny Hockey. Obviously, it didn't really help them get to the playoffs like they would have expected. Team's right at the bottom, right in the middle of the Connor Bedard sweepstakes. But, I think this team actually has a lot to look forward to. Lots of good prospects in this system. We saw Juracek. He looks like a pretty solid defensive prospect. Stanislav Savzil as well, other great defensive prospect. And this year, you got to see guys like Marchenko and Kent Johnson really had a solid rookie year. I think this team has a good future and should be good for years to come.
Yeah, this team has a high draft pick, so I expect them to hopefully get a big center that can really help this team. Kent Johnson, it was good to see him play this year. I thought he had a pretty good season overall, all things considered. This team, personally, to me, doesn't look the same ever since John Tortorella left this team. It feels like this team lacks a lot of structure. This team kind of play out very loose, and it just doesn't look as good. But I hope they land a really big draft pick this year. They have a high draft pick. Let's see what they do from here.
Next up, we have the Anaheim Ducks. And the Anaheim Ducks did pretty much what we expected to see from this year. Neither of us were really surprised. We both had them right at the bottom of this division. And now they're right at the bottom of the league. Once again, really young team. Going to be in the draft lottery. Going to get one of those top 4 studs most likely. Almost guaranteed pretty much at this point. Which means they're going to have a really good shot to rebuild pretty fast because all these players in this upcoming draft are absolutely insanely talented. I mean, Trevor Zegras had a pretty solid season. Troy Terry was a really nice surprise to see. This guy, back-to-back good seasons now. He's proving it wasn't a one-off. It wasn't a fluke. And they're going to get guys back who were on the IR all year, guys like Jamie Drysdale. And next year, you're going to have guys like Olin Zellweger, really strong prospect, played for Team Canada in the World Juniors. He should be up there. And this defense should start taking shape.
The problem I have with the Anaheim Ducks is that I feel like they're going to be in a rebuild for a very long time just because they just don't have good veteran players on this team. All their players that they have in their system that are considered good are very young, and they're not ready to take that next step to me. Anyway, so they're still a few years away from really taking that next step. Zellweger's a good player that's coming up the system. Drysdale, we'll see what he can do next year, but we need to see more from these guys.
Next up, we got the Chicago Blackhawks. And the Blackhawks, I mean, once again, this is one of those teams that right from the beginning of the year, we knew this was going to be a lottery team. This wasn't good. They got rid of guys. They got rid of Patrick Kane. They got rid of DeBrincat before the season started. This team was clearly going full tank mode, and they're going to have a shot at guys like Connor Bedard, Adam Fantilli, and these guys. This is a team, unfortunately, that has a little bit less currently to work with than, say, the other two teams we just mentioned. Not as much in the system. Lucas Reichel looks to be a very solid prospect for this team offensively. I do think over the next couple years, we're really going to see this guy blossom. From here, I really think they do got to get some more depth. I think this is like Cohen said for the Ducks. I think this is going to be the same for the Hawks. This is going to be a multi-year project. They're going to have to keep drafting in the top 5 for probably the next 2 or 3 years, quite honestly. But eventually, they'll probably get there. I can't wait to see guys like Kevin Korchinski, defensive prospect, coming in. Maybe he'll be their new power play quarterback. But I think next year, they're going to look to get rid of guys like Seth Jones and just completely continue the rebuild.
Yeah, when I said the Ducks were a few years back, this team is many more years back. I mean, this team is pathetic, and from top to bottom, I hate this team. It looks like crap. They trade away guys like Kirby Dach, promising player. Never understood that.
Weird.
Trading away Alex DeBrincat. They're shot themselves in the foot there, and they deserve it.
Next up, we got the San Jose Sharks. And the Sharks, they're going to be drafting most likely top 5 as well, like these other teams, right at the bottom of the league. But the Sharks managed to get at least a little bit back for some of their players. They traded away Timo Meier at the deadline, and they managed to get some good draft capital as well as a young player in Fabian Zetterlund, which the jury's kind of still out on this guy. He's shown signs at times, but I don't know if he's going to be absolutely elite by any means. Most likely this team is going to be building around the pick they get this year and star prospect William Eklund, who showed he really does have some game. He came into the NHL, played his games. They made sure to not burn his contract, so that was good. But this guy showed a lot of potential. He looked really good out there as a playmaker, even scored some goals, which was nice. And guys like this, coupled with Erik Karlsson, if they choose to keep him, should give this team at least something to build off of in the upcoming years.
Yeah, unlike the other few teams we were talking about earlier, actually I liked some of the players on this team. I mean, they have veteran players in Thomas Hertl, Logan Couture. They have obviously William Eklund coming up, who's a very promising young player. So they have a balance of both veteran players and some young players coming up. And on top of that, they're going to get a high draft pick. So I do like the outlook of this team. They do need to go out and get a goalie, personally. Erik Karlsson had a fantastic year. And I like some pieces on the back end, like Mario Ferrero. He could be good.
Yeah, really solid.
Yeah, really solid. So we'll see what they do.
Next up, the Montreal Canadiens. And this team, I feel, has already kind of got a bit of a head start. They had a really, really young team this year. Actually, at times, it looked like they were rostering an AHL roster with how young their team was. It's kind of ridiculous. But they really had some promising showings from these guys. Cole Caulfield, before he got hurt, as much as he's not my favorite guy, really looked like quite a strong goal scorer. Could be a guy who gets 40 goals down in the future. Really solid. Nick Suzuki, what a great choice for a captain. This guy is a great leader. Really good two-way player. I love his effort, always back-checking, always fighting for the puck. Really solid all-around player, and he's going to be a great leader for years to come. And what I like the most, I think, about this team that shocked me a lot was how these young prospects in the defense for this team were. Between Caden Gooley especially and Morgan Barron, these guys had phenomenal rookie seasons. And it's looking like this team down the line is going to have a very good future, especially on the back end.
Yeah, I was very impressed with Caden Gooley this year, actually, considering with the position he was put in this team. The team, actually, the Montreal Canadiens, they're going to build around Cole Caulfield and Nick Suzuki. I mean, these two is well known. I think this team actually could potentially be pretty good pretty soon. They're still a few years away. They weren't not that long ago. They were in the Stanley Cup Finals.
No, I mean, and they got first overall last year.
Yeah, so they know that now that the Carey Price will never come back to this team at this point. So they're gonna have to find goalie down the road.
Next up, the Arizona Coyotes. And man, this team, you know what? I gotta say, as much as everyone rags on the Arizona Coyotes, whether it's they say, oh, these guys got no fans, these guys are terrible, this team really impressed me this year. Like, overall, we knew they weren't going to make the playoffs or anything crazy, but a lot of players on this team really stepped up, and they're not even going to be a bottom 5 team this year, which is incredible considering the expectations. Clayton Keller had an absolutely insane year. Over 80 points, like that's wild, especially on a team like this. Nick Schmaltz played really great. And you know what? This team has a lot to build around. And as a Coyotes fan, I'd be hyped for this team. Most likely you're going to get a really solid player in this upcoming draft, whether it be 6th, 7th, 5th, or if you win the lottery, you never know. There's still a chance. But you also got guys like Logan Cooley, who had an amazing draft plus 1 season, just dominated right now in college. This guy looks like the best player, probably not in the NHL right now, other than maybe Connor Bedard. So that's really exciting, especially with just how dominant he was. This guy's going to be a number 1 center most likely in the NHL. You can see it when you watch his game, just truly incredible. And mixing that with guys like Keller, this team might have a really solid youth core. They managed to trade away Jacob Chychrun, which sure they didn't get as much in the package as I had hoped they would get with the 1st and the 2nd. But I mean, at least that drama is over with and they can finally build for their future.
Yeah, you know what? All the teams that did not make the playoffs, I think Arizona's probably the one I'm really cheering for the hardest, just because they of what happened with playing this type of arena with like I don't even know.
They dealt with a lot of shit.
They dealt with a lot, and the thing is, I like this team. They play hard this year. And so many games against good opponents like Toronto, Tampa. They were up.
They beat a lot of good teams.
They beat a lot of good teams. And this team has a lot of good players on the team. Barrett Hayden is having a phenomenal year. You look at Michelli's having a great year. JJ Moser is having a great year. And then you just keep going. The list goes on. Like, they have a lot of good players on this team. And on top of that, I like their goalie. Vejmelka is a good goalie, underrated.
It felt like no one played bad.
Yeah, no one played bad. This team played hard for what they had. Very good team. I'm very excited to see what the future holds for this team.
Next up, the Philadelphia Flyers. And I mean, to start this year, I know this guy was pretty high on the Philadelphia Flyers under Torts, but you know, Torts wasn't even enough to fix this team. I mean, they dealt with a lot of stuff this year. This team was clearly on the rebuild, on the mend. They didn't really have the star power they used to. They no longer had Claude Giroux, who was there for over for 1,000 games. I mean, it's pretty hard to play without that guy. And then Sean Couturier missed the entire year. Just not a lot going for the Philadelphia Flyers. But once again, these guys did show some signs that they can actually move in a positive direction. Owen Tippett, who a prospect I really always hated, did not think was very good, had a pretty decent season, I must say. I'll call it what it is. He was pretty solid. Travis Konechny went absolute beast mode this year. He's showing he can be a true first-line player in this league after having kind of 2 back-to-back meh seasons before this. Really impressed me a lot. I'm going to look to assume that this team in the offseason is going to get rid of guys like Kevin Hayes and JVR because, I mean, these guys are older players and doesn't really fit the direction. But this team is going to be drafting top 10 in the upcoming NHL entry draft, and this is a very deep draft. They should be able to add a nice little piece. And, I mean, when you can add a nice little piece like that with these pieces that they already have, they really got a lot to work with. And they still have Carter Hart. As much as I kind of bag on him sometimes, this guy is still a very young goaltender and has a very promising future.
Yeah, I mean, I was really high on this team in the beginning of the year because of Torts, and not even Torts can fix this team, unfortunately. I agree with Scott. Like guys like Kevin Hayes needs to be moved. He doesn't fit the direction of this team at all. He clearly was benched for a lot of the games in the second half of the season after the All-Star break. And you know what? This team has a bright future. Getting Couturier back next year is going to be huge for them. And then on top of that, they're going to get a high draft pick this year. And on top of that, they got some Bobby Brink. Didn't even play.
Bobby Brink will be back. Yeah, Bobby absolutely. Brink, he's a solid energy player.
And one more player I want to touch on, Noah Cates. He played really well.
Noah Cates was like the perfect Torts player, man. He loved that guy. And now for my team, the Washington Capitals. What can I say? I really thought at the beginning of the year this team would be a playoff team. Not necessarily because they were amazing, but I just thought the experience and the one last hurrah with this team would be enough. But this team's old. I really would say, though, I like some of the stuff we did. I mean, Ovi's still kicking, still a 40-goal scorer at his age is truly incredible. Backstrom's probably going to be retiring soon, if I'm being honest. I mean, this guy has gone through a lot injury-wise. Not his fault. Great player. Probably future Hall of Fame, or just unfortunate with the injuries. Same with guys like TJ Oshie, always banged up. But one thing I really liked that we did this year, actually a couple things, is we actually did some nice retooling that I think could help over the next 2-3 years. I really liked adding Dylan Strome to this team. This guy broke 60 points in his first year with the Capitals and really filled in well when we were missing centers. Along with Rasmus Sandin, what a great add that was. This guy looks like a true future top 3 defenseman on our team for a long time to come. Former first-round pick, talented guy, hits everything that moves, has an offensive edge. I do really like some of the moves the Capitals made. Unfortunate they missed the playoffs, but I do think there is some positives to build upon.
You know what? I'm glad the Washington Capitals missed the playoffs this year. It's time that it's a new era now. I mean, that time is done with the dominance of the Washington Capitals and the Pittsburgh Penguins. Both teams don't make the playoffs this year. It's about time. These teams are really up there in age, and they need to start rebuild the cupboard with some young prospects.
Yeah, I can't wait to draft in the top 10 for once.
Top 10 That's for rare. Once. Getting Rasmus Sandin. Rasmus Sandin just came in and just absolutely ripped it up. And it's gonna be interesting to see what they do in the future. But I'm gonna be curious to see how many years they don't make the playoffs, because I just don't feel like with this core right now they're gonna make the playoffs.
Yeah, probably a long rebuild if I'm being honest.
Yeah.
Now the Detroit Red Wings. Detroit, one of these teams that we really thought in the offseason got a lot better. And I mean, to be honest, they did. This team was flirting with being over 500 for most of this season. They started off really red hot. They were in the playoffs for a long time this year. Unfortunately, they didn't have the depth to really hold that spot, and goaltending kind of down the stretch went a little shaky. Ville Husso was actually pretty solid for the most part. Unfortunately, when he wasn't playing or when he got hurt, Nedeljkovic and some of these other goalies were absolutely horrible, and it was basically an automatic loss every time they played. Really like Larkin's game this year. Larkin played really, really well. He kind of took it up a notch, which was nice to see. This team managed to trade away Tyler Bertuzzi. I mean, in my mind, very necessary. As good as this player is, really solid, top 6 player with a lot of grit. Didn't really fit the direction of this team, I don't think. I felt like there was other wingers in the system that they should build around more. Guys like Lucas Raymond, who kind of struggled in his sophomore year, but has a lot of potential. I really thought Seider kind of took a step back for a lot of this year, but we know he's still an absolute elite future defenseman. I mean, the guy is so young still. He's in his early 20s. I'm not going to react to one bad year. Simone Edvinsson came up and played some games, and he actually looked really solid. Kind of showed some offensive pop I didn't think he was going to have right away. So, I mean, when you have Seider and Edvinsson on the back, you really have a lot to work with. And I think that this team, with once again, probably getting a top 10 draft pick again this year, this team is going to really be on a good path.
Yeah, this team was so weird. I mean, they start so hot and everyone's so high on them early, and then they just died. They went back to reality like halfway through the season.
Yeah, no endurance for it.
No endurance sport. And yeah, it's just Moritz Seider just surprised me in the sense that he wasn't as good as I thought he was. Like, I know he's a good, promising player for this franchise, but this is his second year already, and I expect better things already at this point. And it's disappointing, personally, to see him and Lucas Raymond not playing as well as I thought they would. Other than that, Dylan Larkin's pulling up his weight. I thought he was really the only really consistent player on this team all year round. And Philly Husso was also pretty good as well. Yeah, but aside from that, I like Simone Edvinsson. He's a big defenseman who's going to come in. Hopefully, next couple years, he's going to be a force back there. They need him.
Yeah, we saw this guy. He is a tower, man. Yeah. This guy's a tall guy.
Yeah, we'll see what they add in the covers. I trust Steve Yzerman. He's a very smart GM. He's loading up the covers with draft picks and young players. So we'll see.
No, I think this team's on a good direction.
Yeah.
Next, we have a team that drove us nuts pretty much all year, and that's going to be the Vancouver Canucks. Man, from the start they had to this season where they were blowing leads like crazy to just being way under where we projected them. At the beginning of this year, both me and Hohen, we thought this was a playoff team. We looked at this roster top to bottom. We knew their defense was kind of weak, but we thought the offense could outscore the problems, and with Demko in net, it shouldn't be too bad. This team really took a step even farther back than we thought. They were pretty horrible for about the first 60 games. Then when they hired a new coach in Rick Tocchet, things did change. Unfortunately, a little bit too late for this team. This team still wasn't able to make the playoffs, obviously. They're on our list here. But man, they were hot down the stretch. Once again, that's the second year in a row they've done this. They must really just love toying with their fans. Elias Pettersson, by far the biggest, most impressive player on this team. 100-point player, just absolutely phenomenal. After a lot of people thought that he was kind of like overrated, getting 60-something points back-to-back years, this guy really just exploded onto the scene and just dominated. Going to be top 10 in NHL scoring this year. Along with Quinn Hughes, I really was impressed with his defensive game taking a step this year. This guy was plus on a bad team this year, and he really kind of turned around the narrative that people had for him where he was only offensively talented and had no defense. Sure, he's still not the best defenseman in the world, but he definitely picked it up, and I'm really impressed with it.
You know what? Of all the teams on this list, Vancouver, to me, is a very good hockey team, and next year they're going to be very good. It's just unfortunate that the Thatcher Demko earlier in the season didn't play well, and then he was injured, and then he went down, and the goalies that played after him just weren't good at all. But you know what? Ever since Rick Tocchet took over this team, I actually like the way this team play a lot better. There's way more structure in place. The defensemen are playing way better. Quinn Hughes is my vote personally for the Norris Trophy. I think this kid is unreal. 70-some points as a defenseman, but more importantly, he was plus 15 or something. I can't say the same about Erik Karlsson. Erik Karlsson has been getting 100 points, sure, but the thing is he's sacrificing getting those points by leaking a lot of defensive chances as well. So I like Quinn Hughes. I like his skating. He's young. He's a terrific defenseman. I mean, I like this Vancouver team a lot. Yeah,
just one more thing I wanted to add. This team managed to get rid of the Bo Horvat contract and trade. They weren't going to be able to re-sign this guy. I really like the package, like we said in the video before, that they got back, getting Aatu Räty for the future. Beauvillier's been actually pretty decent with this team and kind of fits in with Kuzmenko and Pettersson. And I want to add in one last thing. Andrei Kuzmenko was everything that this team could have expected and more. For the price that they paid for this guy was absolutely a monster out there and truly just... Too bad he couldn't win Rookie of the Year, because honestly, as great as Matty Beniers has been, Andrei Kuzmenko would have been Rookie of the Year if he was eligible. And now for the streakiest team of the year, we got the St. Louis Blues. My gosh, whether it was winning 7 in a row or losing 8 in a row, this team drove us nuts all year. They had nothing but just on and off play, and it was unreal. I really do like a couple things they did with this team. I think they took a moment of realization of what they needed to get through on this team to get better. They traded away Vladimir Tarasenko, which has been in the works for like 2 years now. This guy has wanted out clearly. He did not want to be on this team anymore. So they managed to get a decent amount back for him from the Rangers, which is good. I mean, got a first round pick out of it, so that's always solid. And they managed to trade away Ryan O'Reilly. Sure, he was their captain, former Stanley Cup winner, both of them. But this was a player who, once again, just was kind of fading. He had an awful year. Like on St. Louis, Ryan O'Reilly had his worst career year I think I've ever seen him have. He was just horrendous. And he doesn't really fit the style of what this team is. And this team is trying to get younger. They're trying to build around guys like Jordan Kyrou, Rob Thomas, and go from there. I think this team has a lot to address in the defensive end of their game. Their defensemen kind of have been weak. I do think Joel Hofer shows some promise as a goaltender, so I don't think they have to completely worry about it. But I think the Jordan Binnington era is probably coming to a close. This guy is kind of psychotic and really, really had a terrible season this year. Over a 3 goals against, under a 900 save, just like horrendously bad goaltending play from him. And I think it's going to be Joel Hofer's net when we come to next year. And they're going to be building around a lot of these young guys and those first round picks they acquired.
This is a perfect example of a team that's retooling, not rebuilding, but retooling. This team has a lot of good pieces in here, like Jordan Kyrou and Robert Thomas, Scott Perunovich. Like they have a lot, and the goalie that you just talked about. 2 players that they definitely need to trade in the offseason is Binnington. I think they need to get rid of him.
Yeah, he's a cancer.
And the other one that they need to get rid of is definitely that defenseman, the big
Parayko. I knew you were going to say that.
I just feel like he's not the right fit for this team. I know he's big and all, but it's time to move on from him. This team needs to get younger. They need to get faster back there. It's just too slow. And it was proven even last year in the playoffs against the Colorado Avalanche. You just see the difference in speed in the defensemen, right?
It's a big gap. It's a fast game.
It's a fast game now. It's different. It's no longer that big, tall, Tyler Myers, slow pylon game no more. It's all about speed. And they need to rebuild that. They need to retool that part of the team.
Yeah. This next team really kind of did not hit my expectations either. But you know what? They finished kind of strong, and that's going to be the Ottawa Senators. On paper, this roster just looks great to me. I look at the Ottawa team, and I'm like, wow. Like, this team's pretty stacked offensively. They can sure score goals. They just got to find a way to keep the puck out of the net. Whether it's their forwards playing really bad, like, I'm just going to call this guy out. Drake Batherson as a forward is just horrendous at defense. Like, this guy is a liability every time he's out there. The guy's like minus 30 this year. It was pretty bad. I don't care if you're a point per game player. If you're minus 30, like, that's pathetic. This guy's got to really step it up, or they got to part ways with him and go in a different direction for some of their second liners. I really, really love this first line this year that they were rolling for most of the year between Stützle, Tkachuk, and Giroux. Absolutely amazing chemistry, dynamic line, and like we both expected, Tim Stützle popped off with an absolutely insane breakout year. This guy was absolute money, and Brady as well. Pretty solid leader. Obviously, he's a physical player, and I really love his game. But together, Stützle and Tkachuk look like the future for like 10 years. This is like a really good pair. I think the best thing this team did, though, was probably at the trade deadline. They probably weren't going to make the playoffs, but they still went and got Jacob Chychrun. Really good fit. This really rounds out their defense. I really like the core of 4 they have with Zub, Shabbat, Sanderson, and Chychrun. That 4 is a really solid top 4. I would probably worry about a new 5-6 defenseman. I'm not really a Brandstrom guy. I don't really like his game that much. But I mean, that core 4 on defense is very nice. And I think between like Stützle, Tkachuk, and that, they can really build towards the future with that core.
I honestly thought this team would have made the playoffs if they had a healthy Josh Norris all year. Like, actually, like, he didn't play at all this season, and they didn't, and that's scary to think about. He's a top 6
potential 40-goal scorer.
Yeah, 40-goal scorer playing in your top 6 who has fantastic chemistry with Brady Tkachuk, and that completes the top 6 completely. And I agree with Scott. Batherson needs to go. I mean, he was like negative 35. Like, he's terrible.
It was bad.
He's terrible. I think
when it's that noticeable.
I think he needs to be part of the package to be moved for a good goalie. This team is the one missing piece, I think, with them.
A good young goalie.
A good goalie. Yeah, and I know they had Sugard, right? I mean, he played fantastic, but they need something more proven. I mean, Cam Talbot has been injured on and off. It's a little difficult year for them. This team is very good, very exciting. I mean, they have a good blend of veterans and young players, and I really like the add of Jacob Chychrun in the deadline. It completes to a lot of teams, he's a number 1 defenseman, and to add him with Tom Shabbat on that top 4 is
and
crazy.
Sanderson, like crazy, wild.
Sanderson, and then Artem Zub and Zaitsev, like
unreal 1, 2, 3 there, yeah.
Yeah, crazy.
This next team really won me over this year. Never was a big fan, but I mean, I couldn't help but be a fan this year, and that's the Buffalo Sabres. This team was unreal, whether it came down to Tage Thompson's surprising breakout year. I did not expect anything like this from Tage. He went absolutely ballistic this year. Him and Alex Tuck just have this chemistry, and Jeff Skinner, the three of them together, that's just like, it's like three misfits almost together, and it just like works. And they're almost like all point per game players. Like they're almost all 30 goal scorers. Like it's absolutely wild what they managed to do. Dynamic all year round. And their second line, having guys like Jack Quinn and Peterka as rookies, really hit it off this year. I was really impressed. And quite honestly, Rasmus Dahlin's career year, this guy could be in the Norris. We talked about other guys that we could consider as Norris candidates. It would definitely have Rasmus Dahlin in there. Like his season was absolutely crazy. This team just has such a good future and such a solid roster as it is. They got guys in the system that they can still bring up to make this team even more dynamic offensively in Matt Savoy and Noah Ostlund over the next 2-3 years. And they already got such a strong top six. Really, it all comes down to if they're able to get good defensive play and good goaltending. And near the end of this year, we kind of got to see Devin Levi came in and played some games, and he looked really solid for Buffalo, and he could be the next goalie of the future for this team. We've seen him dominate in college. I just hope that he can be the missing piece because this team deserves it.
I love this team. The Buffalo Sabres, fantastic young team. You know what? In the beginning of the season, I thought Tage Thompson couldn't keep this up. I thought he was going to be a regression. I thought it was a fluke, but no, he proved us wrong, and I don't think we're ever going to bet against that again.
I got a lot of egg on my face from the Tage Thompson.
We're not going to bet against that again. This guy's a huge, big player that can play a solid center. He can score. He can do everything on this team. He was the heart and soul to me up for this team this year, and he absolutely.
And he had hands.
He had hands for such a big guy. He has hands.
You don't expect it.
I really like this team. Matt Samuelson's an underrated player that no one really talks about because he's a defensive defenseman, but he was good.
Playoffs next year.
Owen Power is good. I do feel like this team do need to get a fourth defenseman to round up that top four.
Yeah, the bottom three.
Yeah. And as good as Levi have been, I would like. On my eyes for this team are all gonna be on the goaltending because I don't know if Luukka Pekkanen is good enough.
I think Levi's better.
I just think Pekka Luukkonen is a little overrated, and I like Levi more, but I still think they need to go out and add a veteran goalie to help out, like a Levi.
Yeah, he's pretty young right now.
Right? Yeah. If it takes trading Pekka Luukkonen for it, I'll do it.
Yeah, that and more defensive depth, and this team's a playoff team for sure.
And one more player I forgot to mention, Dylan Cousin. You played really good this year. You proved me wrong too.
Yeah, I can't forget that guy. That was like wild. Not quite a point per game, but very solid season.
Yeah.
Well, guys, as a Capitals fan, this next one brings me great pride and happiness, and that is the Pittsburgh Penguins will be missing out on the playoffs for the first time in 17 seasons. Longest streak, I think, in all of professional sports, which is absolutely wild, at least all North American professional sports. This team was dominant for so long, but as we know, all great things have to come to an end. No one can play forever. Guys like Crosby and Malkin are getting up there. Don't get me wrong, they both had phenomenal years. They were both over a point per game still. They both put up good numbers, but this team just wasn't the same. Really, I think for Pittsburgh, when I look at this team, they have to get younger. This is a team that's traded away their first-round picks like 8 of the last 9 years. They don't really have a lot of good young prospects in the system. The only guy I can say that I really look at coming up that has the potential to be good offensively would be Samuel Poulin, and even that's kind of shaky right now. He's kind of regressed a little bit. I don't think this team really has much youth, and I really think they're going to have to hit their next few years of draft picks out of the park to really build upon this. I say maybe next year could be the final hurrah for this team to ever make a run if they make it back to the playoffs. But once again, like Crosby and Malkin are both old. They're both over 35 years old now. It's not like they're going to be getting better. If anything, it's going to slowly decline, and they don't really have a lot of other guys that can make up for it.
I am also really happy this team's out of the playoffs just because I don't want to see these old retirement teams in the playoffs. I'm sick of seeing these teams. You know what I mean? I don't even want to see this team in the playoffs next year. I don't want to see them, period. You know what, Pittsburgh, I got nothing against Pittsburgh Penguins. I just feel like the team needs a full rebuild. Like, it's time. Like, you have like a freaking old Malkin. He's not going to carry at this point. He's old. You got Crosby. He's old. You got Letang. He's old. Everyone's old. And then you just have Jake Gensel.
He's not old. Yeah,
Jake Gensel, you know what? He surprised me in the sense that he didn't play as well as I thought he would this year. And I know point production-wise, he's been pretty good, but he didn't really carry the team I thought he would, like he did in the playoffs in that first round there last year against the Rangers. So Tristan Jarry, I know he had
he had a pretty bad year.
Yeah, pretty bad year, some good games and a lot of bad streaks, no young players in the system, all the young guys suck. It's even worse than Washington. Washington is another retirement team, but at least they got Rasmus Sandin, all these young guys.
They retooled a bit better.
They retooled a lot better. Pittsburgh needed a full rebuild.
Yeah, I think they waited a little long, but it might take a while. This might be a team that goes through a 5-6 year rebuild minimum. This next team was really weird. They sold off at the deadline. They got rid of some guys, and then they still went on a playoff run just to barely miss, and that's the Nashville Predators. The Predators... what a weird team. I mean, both of us at the beginning of the year, we projected that they would be worse. We both said they wouldn't make the playoffs this year and they'd fall back, which they did. We were right. A lot of their guys last year had career years and it was very, very unsustainable, whether it was Yossi or Forsberg or Duchesne. They all regressed hard. The only guy I can say that didn't regress and played absolutely phenomenal was Juuse Saros. Truly top 5 goaltender in the NHL, bar none, no question in my mind. He has proven it now. Absolutely insanely talented goaltender. I mean, I think he had the most shots against, the most saves. Like, this guy was absolutely unreal this year. This team kind of had some players that surprised me a little bit. I mean, we got to see guys like Cody Glass and some of these other young kids come up, and Juuso Parssinen, who we talked about a bit. Those guys actually look like they might have some future. I know I am not a big fan of Glass. I kind of thought he was a giant bust going 6th overall that year, a couple years ago when he was drafted. But I mean, at least he was serviceable, maybe as a 3rd or 4th liner at least. I think this team is going to be out of the playoffs for a while, though. I don't think this is going to be a team that gets right back into the playoffs anytime soon. This team, once again, they need to get some good high-end prospects. They need to draft a little bit better. And they traded Ekholm, which was nice. They got a really good package back for Ekholm with Tyson Barrie and first-round pick and some other stuff. But I think they're a bit of ways away.
When I watched that Calgary and Nashville game, a must-win game for both of these teams, I was laughing because when I was looking down the roster for Nashville Predators, I had them like, who are all these players?
AHL players.
These are like all AHL players,
Yeah.
and Calgary still lost to them. That's the funniest part. But I like what David Poile did. We all know that Barry Trotz is going to take over this team next year, and he really did a homie job.
Yeah, he stacked the cupboard
Stacked
good.
the cupboard good. Traded away Ekholm for a big package. They got Reed Schaefer and they got first-round pick, and I believe they got another first-round pick from something else. I think from Mikael Granlund or something.
They got that package for Tanner Jeannot.
Oh, for Tanner Jeannot, that's correct.
Big package, 5 picks.
Big package, and you know what? I think Nashville Predators is in good hands. UC Saros is it was having a heck of a year. He was the only reason they won that Calgary game.
Still pretty young, too.
He was the only reason they won that must-win Calgary game.
Yeah.
I just don't feel like this team is going to make the playoffs next year, unfortunately. I know they didn't have Yossi for most of the season, or parts of the season, big part of the season, but you know what? This team is still, it's now coming back. It's coming kind of like it is realizing it's in a kind of a rebuild mode. We'll see what happens to Yossi's future with this team.
Yeah, very excited for the Trotz era, though, like Hohen said.
Yeah.
I think that could be interesting, and he has all the picks to make some magic happen. So hopefully, sooner than later, for Nashville's sake, that he can make this team a contender again. And last but not least, a team that barely missed the playoff this year. They were in it right till the very last 2 games of the year. It's the Calgary Flames. This team was a pretty big letdown overall. I mean, I know they were close to the playoffs, but I mean, this team won their division last year. This team was dominant last year. This team had multiple 100-point players last year, and these guys are gone. They tried a new build. They had no Kachuk, no Johnny Hockey. They were trying with Huberdeau and Uyghur and some of these new pieces they had, and it honestly didn't click at all. Huberdeau had the greatest drop-off of an NHL player in a full season in the history of hockey. This guy went down from over 115 points to 55 points. He halved. He didn't half. He went less than half his points in a season, playing a full season. There's no excuse. This guy wasn't hurt. This guy just played absolutely horrible. Like, just no excuses for how bad Huberdeau played this year. And when they don't really have a lot of offense on this team, I mean, Lindholm was one of the only players I thought that played decently well this year offensively for Calgary. And then Markstrom had like the worst year I think I've ever seen him have. This team was honestly a disaster, and I'm really disappointed.
This team did not deserve to make the playoffs. Like, they only have like 30-some wins, I believe. So Winnipeg deserved it way more than them regardless, because they actually had more wins. But You know what? Jonathan Huberdeau, that's a very interesting one. This coach is clearly not the coach for this team in the future because this team...
No, I think he's gone.
He's definitely gone, and the way he utilized Jonathan Huberdeau is completely wrong. He put him on a third line in some cases.
He's too old school.
I don't know, I don't know why he... Huberdeau is one of those players that have to be playing with talented players.
Yes,
He's got to play with skilled
I
players.
don't think he can carry his own line.
But the thing is, how often did you see him play with Elias Lindholm throughout the whole year?
Very little. They switched their lines so much,
right?
And honestly, I just think that as I love Daryl Sutter because I'm becoming an old man. I'm in my 30s now. Daryl Sutter was around and dominant for a long time, and he obviously won those Stanley Cups before in the past. But he's just too old school for this team, and I think he's got to go. Yeah,
this era is very different now. It's a speed game, less physical now. It's all about speed and the puck possession.
He doesn't fit the modern game.
He doesn't fit the modern day. Back in 2014 and 2012. With those LA Kings team is very different, but that had way more physicality involved in there. The game wasn't shooting as players weren't getting 100-point season like crazy like they do now. So it's a very high scoring league now, so it's very different. And Daryl Sutter's era is done as an NHL coach. I don't think anyone should hire him. They need a young guy to kind of coach that understands the trend for the future. Use Jonathan Huberdeau properly.
Guys like Kadri too.
Kadri as well. Kadri was on our doghouse, and you know what? I know he didn't play a good season, but he was utilized so poorly on this team. Is a big reason why this team did not make the playoffs. And obviously the Jacob Markstrom, holy crap.
He couldn't stop the beach ball.
He was terrible. I honestly say Vladar was so much better than him this year, and that's sad for me to say, considering they're paying $6 million a year for this guy. So yeah.
Yeah, overall pretty sad. But guys, we hope you guys enjoyed this video. We wanted to give one last call out for all these teams that won't be talked about for a while now. It's playoff time, and we're ready to give you our preview and our predictions for all these upcoming series. We're stoked as hell. I mean, we've been waiting for this for so long.
It's coming up this weekend.
We're coming up this weekend. We're going to be releasing videos like mad, and we're going to get out some good content. So stay tuned, and we will see you in our next video. Till then, take care.
Take care. Bye.